While I was undergoing surgery, my son sold my farm to pay for his honeymoon with my daughter-in-law. When I came back, he said jokingly, "Thanks to your farm, my wife will get to know the Bahamas." I laughed and asked, "What's so funny?" Because fresh from a surgery that nearly claimed my life, still reeling from the scalpel's edge, I walked through my front door hoping for a quiet recovery. Instead, my son Matthew greeted me with words that felt like a physical blow. "Thanks to your farm, Dad, my wife is in the Bahamas." The bitter, mocking smile on his face instantly told me everything. He'd sold my land for her honeymoon. My daughter-in-law, Sophia, that woman who never lifted a finger in her life, was now lounging on paradise beaches, paid for by the literal sweat and blood of my life's work. It was infuriating. Yet what I did next shocked even me. I laughed. A deep, guttural laugh that erupted from my very core. Matthew, his arrogant smirk still plastered on his face, looked utterly bewildered. "Dad, what's so funny?" he stammered, his voice losing its mocking edge. I just kept laughing, slowly shrugging off my travel jacket. 40 years. 40 years I'd poured into building this farming empire. Early mornings, late nights, sacrificing every comfort to secure their future. And this was my firstborn's greeting? This betrayal? "Oh, Matthew," I finally managed to gasp between chuckles. "If only you knew what you just did." The color drained from his face. That arrogance? Gone, like morning dew under a blazing sun. "What? What do you mean?" he whispered, his hands visibly starting to tremble. I took a slow step towards him. Those 3 weeks, Matthew thought I was just in a hospital bed, fighting for my life. But in reality, he was busy making the most catastrophically stupid decision of his own. And the worst part? He had no idea how stupid. "The farm you sold, my dear son," I said, wiping away a tear, though this one was from bitter amusement. "Did you truly believe I'd leave my life's work unprotected?" Matthew gulped hard. "Dad, I had the deeds. Everything was in order. The notary told me." I cut him off. "The notary told you exactly what Sophia wanted you to hear. Because your darling wife knew precisely what papers she was pushing in front of you." A heavy silence descended, thick enough to suffocate us both. I watched Matthew's brain struggle, connecting dots he desperately wished weren't there. "How much did you get for the sale?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm, even though a storm of fury and disappointment raged inside me. $200,000, he mumbled, eyes fixed on the floor. "Enough for the honeymoon and some debts we had." I laughed again, but this time, it was sharp, brittle, laced with pain. $200,000, I repeated, each word a venomous sting. "For a property worth—" I deliberately trailed off. No, I wasn't giving him the full truth yet. I needed to see the full extent of this betrayal, who else was involved, what other schemes they'd hatched while I was fighting to simply breathe. "Matthew," I said, turning towards the kitchen, "I think we need to talk. But first, you're going to tell me everything. From the very beginning. And don't you dare lie. I already know more than you could possibly imagine." I heard the sickening thud as he collapsed into a kitchen chair, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of his world had just caved in. For the first time, the magnitude of his mistake seemed to truly hit him. "Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you," he choked out. "Sophia said it was just a small farm you barely used." "Barely used?" I echoed, slowly. My blood ran cold. "That was her justification." He nodded miserably. "She said we deserved this honeymoon after everything we'd been through, that you would never find out because you were sick." He stopped abruptly, the unspoken words hanging heavy. "And they thought I would die on that operating table." My son's eyes, suddenly wide and tear-filled, darted up to mine. "No, Dad! We never thought that. Never! But you bet on that possibility, didn't you?" I interrupted, the words cutting like glass. "Because a dead father can't reclaim his properties, can he?" Matthew's sobs filled the kitchen, a raw, wrenching sound like a tin roof under a relentless downpour. Tears streamed down his face as he shook his head, a desperate attempt to undo the damage with sheer willpower. "Dad, I swear on Mom's memory, we never thought you'd die." "Never," he choked, wiping his nose with the back of his hand, just like he did as a little boy. "Sophia just said we needed that money urgently." I poured myself a cup of coffee, the familiar aroma a small anchor in the chaos, and sat across from him. For 38 years, Matthew had been my pride, my firstborn, smart and hardworking. When had he transformed into this broken man, so easily manipulated by a woman who saw nothing but dollar signs where a family should have been? "Tell me exactly what happened," I commanded, my voice firm, but not unkind. "From the moment you arrived at the hospital until the day you signed those papers." He took a shaky breath, trying to compose himself. "On the day of your surgery, when the doctors said it was very risky, Sophia became hysterical. She cried for hours, saying that if something happened to you, we would be left with nothing." "Nothing?" I repeated, a skeptical eyebrow raised. "You two don't have your own jobs? Your own money?" "Yes, but Sophia said with the wedding expenses and everything we'd invested in the house, we were drowning financially. The honeymoon we'd dreamed of was impossible with our income." I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring its bitterness. "So, my property was the convenient solution to your financial woes." "It wasn't like that," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "Sophia investigated. She went to the county recorder's office, reviewed documents, spoke with lawyers. She showed me you had 8 properties, and that St. Sebastian farm was the smallest and least productive." St. Sebastian. The name echoed in my chest like a blaring alarm. Of course, they picked that one. The one that looked least important on paper, the one any amateur would deem expendable. "And you?" I asked, a dangerous calm settling over me. "You didn't investigate anything on your own?" "I trusted my wife," he murmured, still avoiding my gaze. "She has a business degree, Dad. She knows these things better than I do." "Sophia studied business administration, Matthew, not agricultural land management," I reminded him. "There's a huge difference between managing an office and understanding the real value of a farm." He fell silent, processing my words, the gears slowly turning in his head as he began to grasp the true magnitude of his blunder. "Continue," I ordered. "How did you get the documents? How did you manage to sell without my authorization?" Sophia said she had a contact at the county recorder's office. Someone who knew the process for medical emergency cases. When a person is in surgery, at risk of death, apparently the closest relative can make financial decisions if they have a power of attorney. Power of attorney? The words were ice in my mouth. "When did I ever give you power of attorney, Matthew?" He paled further, if that was even possible. "Sophia said you had signed it years ago, as a precaution. That it was in a bank safe deposit box with your will." The lie. It was so brazen, so meticulously crafted, I almost had to admire my daughter-in-law's chilling cunning. 2 years she'd been married to my son. 2 years she'd played the perfect, submissive, grateful wife. And all that time, she'd been studying, planning, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Did you see this document?" I pressed. "Sophia showed it to me. It had your signature and everything." "Your wife forged my signature." "No, well, I don't know. It looked real. She said it was a legal document you'd prepared in case something happened to you." I pushed myself up from the table and walked to the window. My land stretched out, endless, to the horizon. Acres upon acres of hard work, of sacrifice. Every tree planted, every fence built, every animal raised with my own hands. My legacy. "Matthew," I said without turning, "how long did it take to find a buyer?" "Not long. Sophia already had one in mind. A businessman from Chicago who'd shown interest in rural properties." "How did Sophia know about this businessman?" Silence. A long, agonizing silence. I finally turned. Matthew had his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "How, Matthew?" She had been in contact with him since before the surgery," he finally confessed, his voice barely a whisper. She said it was just out of curiosity, to know the market value of the property. The final, sickening piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Sophia hadn't merely reacted to my surgery. No. She'd been planning this for months, maybe years. My illness had simply been the perfect, most convenient opportunity. "And where is my dear daughter-in-law now?" I asked, a strange, terrifying calm washing over me, the calm that always precedes a hurricane. "In the Bahamas. She left a week ago. Said she needed to rest after the stress of everything that had happened." "Stress?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Poor Sophia. It must be incredibly stressful to rob your father-in-law while he's dying in a hospital bed." "Dad, it wasn't robbery. It was a legal sale. We have all the papers, all the signatures, all forged signatures." I interrupted, the words snapping. Matthew froze. "What do you mean?" "I mean that to legally sell St. Sebastian Farm, you don't just need a supposed power of attorney. You need my direct authorization, my physical presence at the recorder's office, and verification by 3 witnesses confirming my identity." I watched the blood drain from his face, his mind struggling to grasp the impossibility of his legal sale. "But the notary said everything was in order," he choked out. "Which notary, Matthew? Give me the name." "James Morrison. He has an office downtown." "James Morrison. Of course. The same notary who'd been investigated for irregularities last year, the one with a reputation for looking the other way if the price was right." "My dear son," I said, returning to my seat, "I think both you and Sophia were either victims of a scam, or willing accomplices." The silence was suffocating, thick enough to be cut with a knife. Matthew stared at me, eyes wide, as if I'd just declared the world was flat. His mouth opened and closed, a fish out of water struggling for air. "Scam?" he finally managed to articulate. "But Dad, I saw the documents. Everything seemed legal. James explained every step of the process to us." I leaned forward, studying every minute twitch of his face. 4 decades of being a father had taught me to discern between genuine guilt and calculated manipulation. What I saw now in Matthew was pure, unadulterated panic. The raw terror of a man slowly realizing he'd been nothing more than a pawn in a much darker, far larger game. "Tell me exactly what documents you signed," I demanded, my voice tight, trying to rein in the hurricane raging within. "First, a sworn statement saying you were temporarily incapacitated. Then I signed as your legal representative. And finally, the purchase and sale contract on your behalf." Each word was a fresh stab wound. "And it never once occurred to you," I pressed, "why I, a man who'd managed my own businesses for decades, would suddenly need his son to make financial decisions for him." "Sophia said it was normal for medical emergencies," he mumbled. "Legal protection, so hospitals wouldn't put liens on properties if medical expenses got out of control." "Medical expenses?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping. "Matthew, I've had private health insurance for 20 years. Every single expense from my surgery was covered." I watched his face crumple further. Each truth I laid bare obliterated another layer of Sophia's meticulously woven lies. "But she showed me hospital bills," he whispered, almost broken. "They said there were extraordinary expenses not covered by insurance." "Bills that, conveniently, your wife showed you," I countered. "Bills not even in my name?" He nodded miserably. "They were in the family's name. Sophia said that's how the hospital dealt with this type of case." I got up, the rage a cold fire in my veins, and walked to the drawer where I kept my most vital documents. I pulled out a folder, placing it firmly on the table between us. "Here are the real hospital bills," I stated, opening it. "As you can see, all expenses were covered. My total out-of-pocket was $150 for some extra medication." Matthew's trembling hands picked up the papers. His eyes scanned each line, each number, as if reading his own death sentence. This can't be," he whispered. "The bills Sophia showed me were for $200,000. Fake bills, Matthew. Created specifically to justify the urgency of selling my property." He shot up, knocking his chair backward with a deafening crash. He began pacing frantically around the kitchen, raking his hands through his hair, just like he did as a confused teenager. "I have to call her," he stammered, fumbling for his phone. "I have to ask her about this. There has to be an explanation." "Oh, of course," I drawled, sarcasm dripping from every word. "Call your wife, luxuriating on paradise beaches with money from a fraudulent sale. I'm sure she'll have a perfectly logical explanation." He dialed Sophia's number, his fingers shaking, waiting once, twice, 3 times. "She's not answering," he mumbled, trying again. "How odd," I mused. "A woman who just committed fraud doesn't want to talk on the phone. Truly surprising." He tried 5 more times, each call vanishing straight into voicemail. Finally, he gave up, collapsing back into the chair, head in his hands. "Dad," he choked. "If what you're saying is true, then I committed a crime." "You didn't just commit a crime, Matthew. You betrayed your own father. You sold your family's heritage to fund the whims of a woman who's been lying to you since the day you met her." Fresh tears streamed down his face. "What am I going to do? How am I going to fix this?" I sat across from him again, my heart aching to see my son so utterly broken. Despite the betrayal, the pain, he was still my firstborn. The baby I'd cradled, the boy I'd taught to walk, the young man who'd filled me with such pride at his college graduation. "First," I said softly, "you're going to tell me everything you know about this operation. Every detail. Every conversation. Every document you signed. And when I say everything, I mean everything." He nodded desperately. "I swear, Dad. I'll tell you absolutely everything. Second, you're going to help me undo this disaster. Because I guarantee you I will not allow my property to remain in the hands of scammers." "But the money's already been spent," he whispered. "Sophia took almost everything for the honeymoon. Only $30,000 remained, which we used to pay house debts." "Oh, my dear son," I said, a cold, almost predatory smile touching my lips. "If you think Sophia only took the honeymoon money, you haven't even begun to understand what's really happening here." His eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean that while you thought you were selling a $200,000 farm, Sophia knew perfectly well she was selling a property worth much, much more." "How much more?" I held his gaze for a long, agonizing moment. My son, my firstborn, sitting there with tears in his eyes and terror in his heart. It was time for him to know the full, complete truth. The truth that would shatter his world forever. "Matthew," I said, drawing out each word slowly, "St. Sebastian Farm isn't just some piece of land. It's not just for cattle or crops." "Then what is it?" he asked, breath held. "It's the heart of my entire empire. Beneath that apparently insignificant land, there are 3 underground water wells that supply the entire region. And it has active lease contracts with 5 different companies, paying $1.2 million annually just for the right to use that water." I watched his face turn completely ashen. $1.2 million per year, Matthew. And those contracts are valid until 2035. He gripped the edge of the table, as if to keep from fainting. "That means the property you sold for $200,000 is conservatively worth $15 million. The silence that followed was absolute, suffocating. Even the birds outside seemed to have stopped their singing. Matthew stared at me as if I'd just announced gravity had ceased to exist. $15 million. He repeated mechanically. "And Sophia knew." "Yes, Matthew. Your dear wife knew exactly what she was doing when she chose that specific property. $15 million. He whispered again, the words foreign, incomprehensible. His face had taken on a grayish pallor, reminding me chillingly of his mother during her first heart attack. "Dad, this can't be true. If that property was worth so much, why didn't you ever tell me?" I leaned back in my chair, feeling the crushing weight of all my years on my shoulders. "And what would you have needed that information for, Matthew? When your mother died, you were 22 and only focused on finishing your studies. When you got married, you were building your own life. You never showed real interest in the family business. But I'm your eldest son. I had a right to know. Rights? The word exploded from me, sharper than I intended. Rights are earned, Matthew. Not automatically inherited. Your brother Peter, he's been working alongside me for 5 years, learning every single aspect of this business. He knows the real value of each property. I saw a shift in his expression, a flicker of that old jealousy and resentment I knew all too well, the same look he used to get when Peter received attention he felt was his by right of primogeniture. Peter knows about the water contracts? He asked, his voice strained. Peter knows everything he needs to know. And he also knows he would never betray his family for a woman he's barely known for 2 years. Matthew lurched to his feet, knocking his coffee cup over, the dark liquid spreading across the table. This isn't fair. I didn't know Sophia was lying to me. Really, Matthew? I stood too, my carefully maintained patience finally cracking. Really? You're going to stand in my kitchen, after selling my most valuable property behind my back, and complain about things being unfair? I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was helping you. Helping me? The laugh that tore from my throat sounded more like the growl of a wounded animal. How exactly were you helping me by selling my land without my knowledge? How were you helping me by letting your wife forge legal documents? I didn't know they were fake. Because you didn't want to know. I finally roared, years of repressed frustration boiling over. Because it was convenient for you to believe Sophia's lies rather than ask the hard questions. Because it was easier to take the money and look the other way than face reality. Matthew recoiled as if slapped. His eyes filled with tears again, but this time, there was something deeper. Not just guilt or panic, but a profound despair. The terror of a man understanding he had lost everything. Dad, he whispered, please tell me what I can do to fix this. Tell me how I can regain your trust. I turned back to the window, looking out at the lands I'd built with my own hands. Each acre, a testament to years of hard work, sacrifice, sleepless nights spent planning my family's future. And now, through my own son's tragic naivety, everything was in jeopardy. Do you know what hurts me most about all this? I asked, my back still to him. It's not the money, Matthew. It's not even the $15 million. It's that my own son saw me as an obstacle to be removed. I never saw you that way. I didn't turn. Then explain to me why you didn't come talk to me before making this decision. Explain why you didn't wait for me to wake up from anesthesia to consult me about something so important. He remained silent, because we both knew the answer. He and Sophia had deliberately waited for my most vulnerable moment to execute their plan. The surgery was on a Wednesday. I continued, each word a shard of pain. I woke up Thursday afternoon. The documents were signed on Friday. Really? You're going to tell me there wasn't time to wait for me? Sophia said there was a very small window of opportunity. He mumbled. That the buyer had other interests, and if we didn't sign immediately, we'd lose the sale. Another lie. I exploded. Didn't it seem convenient that everything had to be done so urgently? Didn't it seem strange that your wife had all the answers prepared? Matthew collapsed back into the chair, utterly defeated. I have to call the notary. I have to cancel the sale. With what money, Matthew? Where is the $200,000? Sophia took most of it for the honeymoon, but we can use what's left. We can get a loan. You don't understand. I interrupted. This isn't just about returning money. The buyer is now legally the owner of St. Sebastian Farm. And I guarantee you, he knows perfectly well what he bought. The realization hit Matthew like a lightning bolt. The buyer, he was in cahoots with Sophia from the beginning. Of course, I said. Do you really believe it was a coincidence that a buyer appeared so quickly, willing to pay cash without asking questions? No. This was planned long before your surgery. Finally, I thought bitterly. My brilliant, 38-year-old son finally understood he had been manipulated from day one. He buried his face in his hands, pulling at his hair in desperation. What am I going to do? How am I going to live knowing I destroyed my own family? That's a question you'll have to answer for yourself, I said, a new, cold resolve hardening within me. But before you start feeling sorry for yourself, there's something else you need to know. He lifted his head, the terror in his eyes confirming he knew the worst was yet to come. What else? He choked out. Sophia isn't in the Bahamas on her honeymoon. Matthew stared, utterly confused. Dad, what do you mean? I mean that while you stayed here crying and feeling guilty, your dear wife flew directly to the Cayman Islands. Do you know why? He shook his head, though I suspected deep down he already knew. Because that's where she opened an offshore bank account 3 months ago. An account where she deposited not $200,000, but $2 million. The silence was absolute. Matthew looked at me as if gravity itself had ceased to function. $2 million? He repeated mechanically. The buyer paid $2 million directly to her. The $200,000 you received was just the tip she decided to share with you, to maintain the facade. I watched his world shatter completely. Everything he believed about his marriage, about his wife, about his own life, evaporated in an instant. How do you know all this? He managed to ask, his voice raw. I smiled then, for the first time since this conversation began. But it was not a pleasant smile. Because, my dear son, while you blindly trusted Sophia's lies, I had already been investigating your wife for 6 months. Investigating Sophia? The words came out like a gasp. Why were you investigating my wife? I walked to the kitchen cabinet and pulled out a second folder, much thicker than the first. I placed it on the table with a heavy thud that resonated throughout the room. Matthew looked at it as if it were a bomb about to explode. Because I didn't reach 68 by being naive, son, I said, slowly opening the folder. And because a woman who appears out of nowhere, marries my millionaire son after 6 months of dating, and never shows genuine interest in getting to know the family, always arouses my suspicions. Sophia didn't know I was a millionaire when we met. Oh no? I took the first sheet from the folder. Here's the report from the private investigator I hired, Gloria Martinez, former detective, specialist in matrimonial fraud cases. Want me to read what she discovered about your dear wife? Matthew's face turned ashen. You hired a private investigator on Sophia? I hired a private investigator for Sophia, I corrected firmly. And it turns out, I had very good reasons to do so. I began to read from the document. Sophia Callahan, 32 years old. Business administration graduate from Northwestern University, as she told you. But what she didn't tell you is that she was expelled in her final semester for falsifying academic documents. I watched Matthew close his eyes as if to ward off the truth, but I was far from finished. Subsequently, she worked at 3 different companies between 2019 and 2021, and was fired from all 3 for embezzlement and falsification of financial reports. This can't be true, he murmured weakly. In 2022, she moved to our town. Do you know why? Because there was a restraining order against her in Chicago. Her ex-boyfriend, a businessman named Richard Era, accused her of stealing $800,000 from his bank account. Lies. Lies. I pushed a photocopy of the legal document across the table. Here's the restraining order. And here's Richard's testimony, detailing exactly how Sophia gained his trust, obtained access to his accounts, and disappeared with the money. Matthew took the document, his hands trembling. His eyes scanned the lines repeatedly, as if willing the words to magically change. But this means, everything was a lie from the beginning. Of course it was a lie. Do you think it was a coincidence she met you at the bar of the most expensive hotel in town? The very same hotel where she'd been staying for 2 weeks, subtly asking questions about the most prosperous local businessmen? I let that information sink in, watching how each revelation further dismantled the carefully constructed image he had of his marriage, his life, himself. I'll continue reading, I said, turning to the next page. 3 days after meeting you at that bar, Sophia had already investigated your address, the value of your house, your annual income, and your family's wealth. How could she know all that? Because Gloria Martinez is very good at her job. And because Sophia isn't as smart as she thinks. She left a huge digital trail, internet searches about wealthy families in the region, queries at the property registry. She even hired a background investigation service to find out everything about you before your second date. Matthew shot up again, pacing in tight circles around the kitchen, his breathing ragged, on the verge of a panic attack. It can't be, he repeated incessantly. It can't be true. She loved me. I knew it. I felt it. What did you feel? I asked, with deliberate cruelty. It was a masterful performance. Sophia had studied exactly what type of woman you were looking for, what made you feel special, what emotional needs you had. And she became that perfect woman. How could she know what type of woman I was looking for? I took another sheet from the folder. Because she reviewed your social media profiles for months. She studied all your ex-girlfriends, analyzed what type of posts you liked, what comments you made. She even created fake profiles to interact with you before meeting you in person. I pushed screenshots across to him, conversations Sophia had had with him under false names, probing his tastes, his dreams, his insecurities. These are conversations you had with Carmen Herrera and Lucy Rivera on different dating apps in 2021. Do you recognize them? Matthew took the sheets, reading them with growing horror. These women. I thought they were admirers. I talked to them for months before meeting Sophia. They were all Sophia, son. She studied you like a scientist studies a specimen in a laboratory. When she finally met you by chance at the bar, she already knew exactly what to say, how to act, what personality to adopt to make you fall in love. He collapsed back into the chair, the scattered sheets around him a damning testament to his own naivety. Why didn't you tell me any of this before the wedding? Because you're my son, and I hoped I was wrong. I admitted, my own voice faltering slightly. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, you had genuinely found love, and my suspicions were just an overprotective father's paranoia. But you knew she was dangerous. You knew she was an opportunist and a liar. I didn't know she was a professional criminal until after the wedding. I took out the final section of documents. This is what Gloria discovered after Sophia officially became my daughter-in-law. What else is there? He asked, his voice defeated. Contacts with property appraisers, consultations with lawyers specializing in estate law, searches about how to obtain legal power over relatives' properties, and most revealing of all, a secret email account where she coordinated with the supposed buyer of the farm. Matthew's head snapped up. You have access to her emails? Gloria has her methods. And Sophia made the mistake of using the same password for multiple accounts. I showed him printouts of emails between Sophia and a man named Daniel Rodriguez, emails dating back 3 months before my surgery. Here, you can see how they planned the entire operation. Sophia promised him access to St. Sebastian Farm in exchange for $2 million. Daniel knew perfectly the real value of the property because Sophia had provided him with legal copies of all my lease contracts. How did she get copies of your contracts? She searched my home office one night when she came to dinner. While you and I talked in the living room, she pretended to go to the bathroom and photographed all the important documents. Matthew buried his head in his hands. I'm an idiot. A complete idiot. Yes, I said without mercy. You are. But now the question is, what are you going to do about it? He lifted his head, and for the first time since he'd walked through my door, I saw something resembling determination in his eyes. I'm going to help you recover the farm. I'm going to do everything in my power to undo the damage I caused. Even if it means testifying against my own wife. She's not your wife, he corrected, his voice firm, unwavering. My wife never existed. It was just an act. A small, approving smile finally touched my lips. Good. Because that's exactly what we'll need to do. What do you need me to do? Matthew asked, and for the first time, his voice sounded like the man I'd raised, firm, determined, without a trace of the weakness that had colored our entire conversation. I got up and walked to the kitchen phone. First, we're going to call Gloria. She's not only my private investigator, she's also my attorney. And she has very good news to share with you. I dialed the number from memory. Gloria answered on the second ring, as if she'd been expecting my call. Robert, how did it go with your son? Exactly as you predicted. He's here with me, completely destroyed, but finally willing to cooperate. Can you come? It's time to put the plan into action. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Did you tell him about the trap we set? Not yet. I wanted to wait for you to arrive, to explain everything together. Perfect. I'm leaving now. I hung up and turned to Matthew, who was looking at me with total confusion. What trap? He asked. The trap we prepared for Sophia and her accomplice, I said, returning to my seat. Did you really think that I, after 40 years managing businesses, would leave my most valuable properties without legal protection? I don't understand. Of course you don't understand, because you've been seeing this situation from a victim's perspective. But I was never the victim in this story, Matthew. I was always the hunter. I watched his face, confused at first, slowly shift into something akin to awe. You're telling me you knew this was going to happen? I didn't know exactly when they'd strike, but I knew they would. Gloria and I have been preparing this trap for months. What kind of trap? A genuine smile finally broke through, the first in weeks. I felt completely in control. The kind of trap that turns hunters into prey. Before he could even respond, we heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Gloria's familiar gray Honda parked next to Matthew's car. There she is, I said, getting up to greet her. Now you're going to hear exactly how we're going to utterly destroy your ex-wife and recover not only my farm, but much, much more. Gloria walked in through the back door without knocking, as was her habit. She was a woman in her mid-50s, with a no-nonsense salt and pepper bob and penetrating eyes that missed absolutely nothing. 20 years as a police detective before starting her own investigation firm. Matthew nodded at her, his face haggard. You look terrible, she observed. I feel worse, he admitted. Good, she replied dryly. That means you finally understand the gravity of what you did. She placed her briefcase on the kitchen table, snapping it open. Did your father explain we'd been investigating Sophia since before the wedding? Yes, he showed me the dossier. That was just a basic dossier, she corrected, pulling out a much thicker folder. This is the complete dossier for Operation Lost Farm. Operation Lost Farm? Matthew looked incredulous. You gave it a name? When you plan a counterintelligence operation for 6 months, yes, you give it a name, Gloria retorted, a flicker of a smile. And this operation was a resounding success. She sat down, opening the folder. First, you need to understand, the sale of St. Sebastian Farm was never legal. Dad already explained that, Matthew said. No, he didn't explain it completely. It wasn't legal because of forged documents, yes. But also, because St. Sebastian Farm technically doesn't exist. Matthew blinked several times. What do you mean, it doesn't exist? I mean that 6 months ago, when we began to suspect Sophia would try something like this, your father legally divided the property into 3 separate parcels. The St. Sebastian Farm that appears in public records is only one of those parcels, the least valuable one. I turned to Matthew, relishing his expression of utter shock. The water wells and $1 million contracts are in the other 2 parcels, which are registered under different corporate names. Corporate names? Matthew asked. Companies I created specifically to protect the most valuable assets, I explained. Sophia effectively sold 30 acres of pasture with no significant commercial value. Gloria continued. The supposed buyer, Daniel Rodriguez, believed he was purchasing access to those water wells. But legally, he only bought cattle land. So Sophia didn't get the millions? Oh yes, she got them, Gloria said, a fierce smile playing on her lips. Daniel paid her $2 million for a property that, in reality, is worth the $200,000 you believed. It's the scammer being scammed, I clarified. But the money is still lost. Matthew whispered, despair in his voice. Not exactly. Gloria pulled out another document. When a transaction is based on fraud and falsified documents, all related assets can be frozen and recovered. What do you mean? I mean that 3 days ago, by court order, we froze Sophia's offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The $2 million is now secure, under legal custody, until the case is resolved. Matthew was speechless, his head swiveling between Gloria and me, as if we were speaking an alien language. There's more, Gloria continued. A federal investigation for money laundering. Matthew's eyes widened. When the FBI reviewed her bank accounts for our case, they uncovered evidence of other illegal operations. Federal investigation? I interjected. Your wife isn't just a small-time scammer, Matthew. She unknowingly associated with a high-level criminal who's been in the FBI's crosshairs for 2 years. Daniel used the $2 million he paid Sophia to launder drug cartel money, Gloria added. Now, both he and she are being investigated for a dozen federal crimes. Is Sophia arrested? Matthew asked, his voice barely audible. Not yet, Gloria smiled. But not because we don't know where she is. Where? In a luxury suite in Georgetown, Cayman Islands. Completely unaware that all her movements are being monitored by international federal agents. Matthew shot up again. Federal agents? How are federal agents involved in this? Because Daniel Rodriguez is more than just a simple scammer, I explained. He's the money launderer for one of the biggest Colombian drug cartels. And Sophia unknowingly became his accomplice. When Daniel used the money from the sale for his laundering operations, he automatically made Sophia part of an international criminal conspiracy. Gloria nodded. This is surreal, Matthew murmured, sinking back into his chair. You're telling me my wife didn't just deceive me, but now she's involved with drug traffickers? Ex-wife, I corrected firmly. And yes, that's exactly what we're telling you. Gloria closed one folder and opened another. But here comes the part that will really interest you, Matthew. The part where you can help bring justice. What do you need me to do? Sophia is going to try to contact you in the next 48 hours, Gloria said. Our sources tell us she's getting nervous because she hasn't been able to access her bank account. How do you know this? Because we've been intercepting her communications for a week. Every call, every message, every internet access attempt is being monitored by federal agents. When she calls you, I continued, she's going to try to convince you everything was a misunderstanding. She'll promise she can return the money, that she can resolve everything. And what should I do? Play her game, Gloria replied. Make her believe you still trust her. Get her to confess everything over the phone. A recorded confession. I confirmed. That will seal her fate, and Daniel Rodriguez's forever. Matthew looked at us, his eyes wide with the enormity of the task. And if I do this, can we really recover the farm? Son, I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. When we finish with this operation, we'll not only recover the farm, we'll recover the millions, plus punitive damages, plus the properties Daniel Rodriguez will lose when he's arrested. How much money are we talking about? Gloria smiled. Conservatively? About $12 million. $12 million? Matthew repeated the words like a magic prayer. How is it possible to recover so much money? Gloria opened a new section of documents. When someone commits fraud using your properties as a base for criminal operations, the law allows you to claim not only the original value, but also all the benefits they obtained illegally through RICO statutes. Additionally, I added, Daniel Rodriguez has considerable assets that will be confiscated when he's arrested. A Miami penthouse valued at $3 million, a yacht worth $2 million, and bank accounts in 3 different countries. And since Sophia was his direct accomplice in the original fraud that made everything else possible, legally, we have a right to a portion of those assets under civil forfeiture laws. Gloria explained. Matthew ran his hands through his hair. This is like a movie. I can't believe all this is happening. Well, believe it, I said firmly. And prepare yourself, because in the next few hours, your life is going to change completely. As if summoned by my very words, Matthew's cell phone began to ring. All three of us froze. Gloria was the first to react. "Who is it?" she asked, leaning in to see the screen. Matthew looked at the phone, his face paling even further. "It's Sophia." "Perfect," Gloria murmured, pulling a small device from her briefcase. "It's earlier than we expected, but we're prepared." "What is that?" Matthew asked, pointing at the device. "A professional-grade call recorder. Completely legal when one party consents to the recording." Gloria connected the device to the phone. "Are you ready for this?" Matthew's eyes darted between us. "I don't know what to say." "Follow my lead," I said, sitting beside him. "Act like the hurt husband, more confused than angry. Let her talk. Let her explain herself. The more she says, the better for us." The phone continued to ring, a shrill, insistent sound. Matthew looked at me, panic etched on his face. "I can't. What if I mess everything up?" "You won't mess anything up," I assured him, my voice unwavering. "Just remember, she needs you more than you need her now. She's desperate." Gloria nodded. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." With trembling hands, Matthew answered the call and activated speakerphone. "Matthew, honey, you finally answered." Sophia's voice, high-pitched and nervous, filled the kitchen. "I've been trying to call you for hours." "Hello, Sophia," Matthew replied, his voice noticeably tense. "How's your honeymoon?" There was a pause. "Matthew, I need to talk to you about something important." "Are you alone?" Gloria signaled to me. I whispered to Matthew. "Say yes." "Yes, I'm alone." "What happened?" "You sound worried." "It's about the farm sale. There's been a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The money, Matthew." "I can't access the money." Gloria and I exchanged knowing glances. Exactly as we had predicted. "What do you mean, you can't access the money?" Matthew asked, following our script perfectly. "The bank account is frozen. The bank says there's an investigation ongoing, but they won't explain what it's about." "What bank account?" Matthew asked, playing his part to perfection. Another pause, longer this time. "Matthew, there's something I didn't tell you about the sale money." "What didn't you tell me?" "The buyer, he wanted to make the payment differently for tax reasons, understand? He asked me to open a special account to receive the money." Gloria smiled, giving a subtle thumbs up. Sophia was digging her own grave. "A special account where?" Matthew pressed. "In the Cayman Islands, but it's completely legal, honey. It's just a way to handle large transactions for tax purposes." "Sophia, how much money is in that account?" Silence. A silence so long I thought the call had dropped. "Sophia, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here." "Matthew, I need you to trust me. There's more money than I originally told you." "How much more?" "The buyer was so eager to close the deal that he offered more money." "Much more." "How much more, Sophia?" Matthew's voice rose, and this wasn't acting. Real anger was starting to break through. $2 million, Matthew, but I can explain everything." $2 million? Matthew stood, pacing in tight circles again. "You're telling me you got $2 million and didn't tell me anything?" "I was going to tell you when I got back. I wanted to surprise you. I thought we could use that money to buy a bigger house, to have the future we always wanted." Gloria scribbled quickly on a notepad. "Ask why the account is frozen." "Sophia, if everything is legal like you say, why is the account frozen?" "I don't know, honey. That's why I'm calling you. I need you to come here to help me resolve this." "Go where?" "To the Cayman Islands. We can resolve this together." Gloria shook her head vigorously, writing, "No, I can't go right now, Sophia. Dad came back from the hospital and needs care." Matthew repeated, "No, I can't go right now, Sophia. Dad just came back from the hospital and needs care." "Your father is back already? How is he?" The concern in her voice was sickeningly fake. Gloria made a disgusted gesture. "He's fine but very weak. The doctors say he'll need weeks of recovery. Of course, of course. Does he already know about the sale? Gloria wrote quickly, say yes and watch her reaction. Yes, I told him. He didn't like much that we made the decision without consulting him. What did he say exactly? He was upset. He said St. Sebastian Farm was more important than we thought. More important how? He didn't give me details. He just said he had special plans for that property. Another long silence. I could almost hear Sophia's mind racing, wondering how much we really knew. Matthew, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did your father suspect something about us? About the sale? Gloria and I exchanged glances. This was the question we'd been waiting for. Why do you ask that? Matthew said. Because there's something strange happening here. The bank is asking me strange questions. Questions about the money's origin, about my relationship with you, about your family. What kind of questions? Glow. Ria quickly wrote, ask her who she thinks reported it. Who do you think could have done that? Only one person occurs to me who has so much knowledge about our affairs and so much power to cause problems. Who? Your father, Matthew. I think your father knew what we were going to do and prepared some kind of trap. Matthew looked at me, genuine admiration in his eyes. You think my father is capable of something like that? Your father is smarter than any of us thought, and I think we underestimated how much he knows about business and law. Gloria gave another thumbs up. Sophia was confessing premeditation. Sophia, are you telling me my father knew in advance what you were going to do? No, well, yes, but not the way it sounds. I just wanted to be prepared in case an opportunity arose. An opportunity for what? To secure our future, Matthew. So we wouldn't have to depend on your father forever. You have your own job, your own money, but it's never going to be enough for the kind of life we deserve. Your father has millions, Matthew. Millions that will be yours someday anyway. Gloria scribbled, get her to confess the forgery. Sophia, I need you to tell me the truth about something. The documents I signed, were they all real? A pause. Why do you ask that? Because my father says he never signed a power of attorney. Your father is confused, honey. The effects of anesthesia can last weeks. Are you sure that document was real? Matthew, why are you doubting me now? Your father is putting ideas in your head. Gloria smiled, writing, *perfect. She's admitting it's a forgery without saying it directly. It's not that I doubt you, Sophia. Matthew continued, following Gloria's instructions. But my father wants to see the original document. He says he needs to verify its authenticity for his own legal records. Why would he want to verify something he signed himself? Because he says he doesn't remember signing it. And you know my father, he's very meticulous with his documents. The silence stretched, so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, her voice returned, different now, more cautious, calculating. Matthew, I think your father is pretending not to remember, to cause us problems. Why would he do that? Because he never liked me. From the day we met, he always thought I wasn't good enough for you. Gloria wrote, ask her where the original document is. Where is the original document? We could show it to him and resolve this whole misunderstanding. Matthew pressed. The document is in a safe place. What safe place? In a bank safe deposit box, along with other important documents of your father's. Gloria and I exchanged incredulous glances. Sophia was inventing lies in real time, digging her grave deeper with every word. Which bank? Matthew pressed. First National downtown. Your father gave me access to his safe deposit box before the surgery. Matthew's voice went up an octave. My father gave you access to his safe deposit box? When was this? It was the day before the operation. He said that in case of emergency, someone in the family should have access to his important documents. Gloria scribbled furiously, that safe deposit box doesn't exist. Your father never had one, Sophia, are you sure it was First National downtown? Because my father always used Wells Fargo. A pause. Yes, you're right. I got confused. It's Wells Fargo. And you have the keys? Yes, I have a copy of the keys. Gloria shook her head, writing, *lie after lie. Keep pressing, *. Could you go to the bank tomorrow and bring the documents, so we could show it to my father and resolve everything? Matthew, I can't come back now. I have to resolve this problem with the bank account first. What problem, exactly? If everything is legal, it should be easy to resolve. It's complicated, honey. The bank is asking questions about Daniel, the buyer. What kind of questions about Daniel? Questions about his financial background, about his other transactions. It seems he's being investigated for something. Gloria smiled, giving 2 thumbs up. Sophia had just admitted she knew Daniel had legal problems. Investigated for what? Matthew asked. I'm not sure. Something about irregularities in his business dealings. Sophia, did you know about these irregularities when you made the deal with him? Of course not. How would I know? Gloria wrote, ask her how she met him. How did you meet Daniel, exactly? You already told me before you had contacts in the real estate sector, but how did you specifically meet him? Through a mutual friend. What friend? Someone I met at my previous job. Which job? I thought you worked in administration at a small company. Another long pause. Yes, that's correct. So, how did that job connect you with someone who knows millionaire farm buyers? Matthew, why are you interrogating me like I'm a criminal? I'm not interrogating you. I'm just trying to understand how we got to this situation. The situation is simple. I made a good deal. The money is temporarily blocked for bureaucratic reasons, and your father is trying to cause problems because he doesn't like that we made independent decisions. Gloria wrote, get her to admit how much she knew about Daniel. Really, Sophia, I need you to be completely honest with me. How long have you known Daniel? Why is that important? Because if this deal becomes a legal issue, I need to know all the details. I've known him for a few months, maybe 4 or 5. 4 or 5 months? But didn't you say you contacted him when Dad got sick? Yes, well, I had spoken with him before, casually, about the property market in general. Did you talk specifically about my father's properties? Maybe I mentioned that your family had land in the region. Gloria wrote, *perfect. Admission of premeditation, *. And he showed specific interest in Dad's land? He showed interest in rural properties in general. Sophia, did you specifically tell him about St. Sebastian Farm? I might have mentioned it. When did you mention it? I don't remember exactly when. Was it before or after Dad was scheduled for surgery? Total silence. A silence that stretched so long Matthew looked at the phone, making sure the call hadn't dropped. Sophia, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. Matthew, I don't see why these details are important now. They're important because I need to understand if this was planned, or if it was a spontaneous decision. It was an opportunity that arose during a family crisis. Nothing more. Gloria wrote, ask her about the $2 million versus $200,000. Sophia, there's something I don't understand about the money. You told me the property was sold for $200,000, but now you say there's $2 million in the account. I already explained that the buyer offered more money than originally agreed. When did he offer more money? Before or after signing? After, when he saw the property and realized its true value. Its true value. What specific value did he see that we hadn't seen? Matthew, why are you pressing me so hard? You should be happy we got more money than expected. I'm trying to understand because my father says that property is worth much more than $2 million. Much more? What do you mean? He says that farm has special contracts that make it worth more than $15 million. The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost picture Sophia on the other end, her mind racing, scrambling for an answer. That's impossible, she finally said. Your father is exaggerating to scare you. Are you sure? Because he seems very confident about his numbers. Matthew, your father is trying to manipulate you, to turn you against me. Or maybe you manipulated me to sell something worth much more than I thought. I would never do that. Then how do you explain that Daniel would be willing to pay $2 million for something apparently worth only $200,000? He must have seen potential we didn't see. Or maybe he knew exactly what he was buying because you gave him information I didn't have. Matthew, you're being paranoid. Am I paranoid, or am I finally starting to see the truth? Sophia's voice changed completely, becoming cold, calculating. The mask had finally fallen. You know what, Matthew? I think your father has completely brainwashed you. You're acting exactly like he wanted. Like he wanted? Yes. He knew this was going to happen. He knew that when you found out about the complete amount, you would be suspicious. He planned everything to turn you against me. Gloria wrote, keep pressing. She's about to confess everything, Sophia, are you telling me my father knew in advance what you were going to do? Your father is craftier than any of us thought. What do you mean any of us? Who else is involved in this? A pause. No one else. Just us. Us includes Daniel. Daniel is just a buyer. A buyer who casually had $2 million in cash available for a purchase that was decided in 3 days. Serious investors always have capital available. Sophia, Matthew said, his voice now completely firm, solid. I think it's time you told me the complete truth. The complete truth? Her voice had turned venomous. All trace of the sweet, worried wife had vanished. What is the complete truth, Matthew? All right. I'll give you the complete truth. Gloria and I leaned forward breathless. After months of investigation and planning, we were finally going to hear a full confession. The truth is, your father was right from the beginning. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew the real value of that farm since before I married you. Matthew froze, as if struck by an electric shock. Since before we got married? Since before I even met you, dear husband. Do you really think it was a coincidence that I showed up at that specific bar, that specific night, dressed exactly the type you like? She laughed, a chilling, triumphant sound. Matthew, I spent 3 months studying you before our first date. I knew you went to that bar every Friday. I knew you'd just broken up with your ex-girlfriend. I knew you had a tendency to fall in love quickly with women who seemed vulnerable and independent at the same time. Gloria touched my arm, whispering, This is better than we expected. Everything was a lie? Matthew asked, his voice choked. Not everything. I enjoyed some moments with you. You're a good man, Matthew. Too good. Too trusting. Too easy to manipulate. And the marriage? The marriage was necessary to have legal access to your family's documents. A girlfriend can ask curious questions, but a wife has legal rights. Matthew looked at me, tears welling, and I nodded silently, giving him strength. How long were you planning to steal the farm? It wasn't stealing. It was smart business. And I'd been planning it since the day I married you. Your father's surgery just accelerated the timeline. How did you know about the water contracts? Because unlike you, I thoroughly investigated your family's wealth before joining it. I hired my own private investigator, reviewed public records, talked to farm employees. Gloria wrote, Ask her about Daniel and Daniel. How long have you really known him? Daniel and I have been partners for 2 years. He specializes in identifying undervalued rural properties with development potential. Partners in what? In various businesses. Your father's farm was just one of many projects. Scam projects, Matthew interjected. Smart asset acquisition projects, Sophia corrected coldly. It's not our fault that owners don't understand the real value of what they possess. Matthew got up, pacing in desperate circles. Sophia, do you realize you just confessed to multiple federal crimes? Crimes? What crimes? Everything we did was legal. You forged my father's signature. Prove it. The 2 words, delivered with chilling coldness. This wasn't the shy Sophia I'd known. This was an experienced criminal. Prove it, she repeated. Because there's no way to prove that signature wasn't authorized by your father in a moment of lucidity before surgery. Gloria smiled fiercely, writing, "She's admitting the forgery." "Sophia, are you admitting you forged documents?" "I'm not admitting anything that can be used against me. But I'll tell you something you can use. Your father will never recover that farm." "Why are you so sure?" "Because Daniel already sold it to an offshore company in Panama, and that company has already begun commercial exploitation of the water wells." I felt a punch to the gut. Gloria looked at me with concern, but I signaled to keep recording. "He sold it for how much?" Matthew asked, his voice strained. "For $12 million. My share is $4 million. Daniel keeps 8. Your share? So you two plan to cheat not only my father, but also the company that originally bought it?" "The company that originally bought it was Daniel's shell company. The entire process was designed to transfer the property as quickly as possible." "Sophia, do you realize you're confessing a massive criminal conspiracy to me?" "I'm explaining to you how the real world works, Matthew. Your family had that farm for years without maximizing its potential. We're doing that. By stealing it? By acquiring it through legal means, and then optimizing its use." Gloria wrote, "Ask her about the blocked money. If everything was as legal as you say, why is the money blocked in your account?" "Because your dear father isn't as stupid as we thought. Apparently there was some kind of legal protection on those properties that we didn't detect." "What kind of protection?" "I'm not sure, but it seems the division of the property we sold wasn't as simple as we thought." I exchanged a triumphant look with Gloria. Sophia had walked right into our trap. Property division. Apparently your father had legally divided St. Sebastian Farm into several different parcels before the sale. "And what does that mean?" Matthew asked. "It means that technically, Daniel only bought part of what he thought he was buying. And the water wells are in the other parcels, the parcels that continue to be your father's property." Matthew looked at me, a glimmer of absolute admiration in his tear-filled eyes. "So, Dad, you outsmarted them." "Your father outsmarted everyone from the beginning," I said, taking the phone from Matthew. "Hello, Sophia. This is Robert." The silence was absolute. I could almost hear the blood draining from Sophia's face as she realized she'd been confessing everything to the very man she tried to destroy. "Robert," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, dear daughter-in-law. I've been listening to your very enlightening confession. You can't use anything I said. It was a private conversation. Actually, I can. Because Matthew consented to recording the call. And because Gloria, my attorney, was present as a witness." "Gloria?" "Gloria Martinez. Also a private detective, licensed, and a specialist in fraud cases." "Hello, Sophia. We'll be seeing you very soon in person." "This isn't legal." "It's completely legal," Gloria intervened, her voice like steel. "And your confession just sealed your fate, and Daniel Rodriguez's. You can't prove anything." "Dear," I said, a grim smile in my voice, "we don't need to prove anything. You just proved everything for us. The contracts Daniel signed are null because they were based on falsified documents. The property he bought doesn't include water rights. And the money he paid you is already under federal custody." "Federal?" "Daniel Rodriguez is being investigated by the FBI for money laundering. The $4 million you mentioned is being traced as part of that investigation." "You can't do this." "We already did, Sophia. While you were enjoying your fake honeymoon, we've been working with federal authorities to dismantle your entire operation." "Matthew!" Her voice turned pleading, desperate. "You can testify that I didn't know Daniel had legal problems." "No," Matthew replied, his voice firm, resolute. "I won't lie for you ever again." "Do you know what's most ironic about all this?" I asked into the phone. "What?" "That if you had come to me honestly, if you had asked me for help for your future with Matthew, I probably would have helped. We could have found legitimate ways to secure your prosperity. But instead, you chose the path of betrayal. And now, you'll pay the consequences." "This isn't over," Sophia hissed, her voice laced with venom. You're right, I agreed. It's not over. Because now comes the part where the authorities arrest you. What do you mean? I mean that while we were having this conversation, federal agents were waiting for the order to arrest you. An order they just received. You're lying. Gloria, I said. Can you confirm to Sophia that I'm not lying? Gloria smiled. Sophia, look out your hotel window. There was silence, then hurried footsteps, and a muffled exclamation of sheer terror. Welcome to justice, dear, I said softly, a chilling finality in my tone. I hope you enjoyed your honeymoon, because it's going to be the last thing you enjoy for a very, very long time. The call ended abruptly. Matthew looked at me, a profound mixture of admiration, shock, and gratitude washing over his face. Dad, he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. You're incredible. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I simply pulled him into a tight embrace. I'm just a father protecting his family, son. That's all. That day, my family almost crumbled, but we rebuilt, stronger and wiser. It was a harsh lesson for Matthew, and for me, a reminder that the bonds of family are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. Every step, every plan, every painful truth was necessary. So I have to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have been as forgiving of your son, or as ruthless with your daughter-in-law? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think.